Hi, it's me, Tracy, your literary companion. Have you ever wondered about the library at Pemberley? Have you ever imagined what it must be like to step into that grand room filled with the scent of old paper, leather bindings, and polished wood? What volumes might Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy have been reading? And which volumes might they have been collecting together? Let's step into Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice and open the doors to the library at Pemberley. Maybe you are like me and often thinking about the places and settings in books and stories and craving even more time and description of them. I often wonder about Pemberley, Mr. Darcy's grand estate, and I often imagine the library Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy had at Pemberley. And the best place to start is Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, which offers us quite a bit about the tastes and educations of one of the most famous couples in literary history. Then by drawing from historical facts about what would have been essential books and reading for an early 19th century gentleman, as well as a woman's reading from this time period as well. It is incredible to consider the wide range of reading from this literary power couple. It is amazing. I had a great time in researching and considering which volumes would have been on the shelves at Pemberley. Mr. Darcy was, as we know, a man of fortune, a man of taste, and so there would have been already a well-established library at Pemberley, to which Darcy added over time. And we can easily imagine Elizabeth Bennet bringing treasured books with her when she married Darcy and adding her own mix to the collection. Let's play library, or should I say librarian, and organize the books likely to be found at Pemberley. Fitzwilliam Darcy would likely have been educated at Cambridge University or a similar institution and would have had a traditional English gentleman's library grounded in classical literature, especially the Greek and Roman authors, mainly in Latin, in some translation. Likely works on the shelves at Pemberley would probably include many of these. The Odyssey by Homer. This recounts the wrath of Achilles and the tragic events of the Trojan War, exploring heroism, fate, and the ultimate cost of glory. The Aeneid by Virgil. This tells the epic journey of Aeneas as he escapes from fallen Troy to found the future city of Rome, fulfilling his destiny through struggle and sacrifice. Metamorphoses by Ovid, which weaves mythological tales of transformation, tracing the world's creation to Julius Caesar's deification through stories of change and fate. Odes and Epistles by Horace. These celebrate the life's treasures, moral wisdom, personal reflection through lyrical poetry and philosophical letters. Lives by Plutarch, which are profiles chronicling famous Greeks and Romans, comparing their virtues and vices to draw moral and ethical lessons. Elizabeth Bennet was a lover of wit and lively conversation, and I feel that she would favor the English poets, essayists, and novelists of taste and feeling of the 19th century. And I'm sure that Darcy would approve of some of these titles as well. The complete works of William Shakespeare, the collection of tragedies, comedies, and histories exploring human nature, power, and ambition and love through enduring poetry and drama. Paradise Lost by John Milton, the epic account of humanity's fall, exploring Satan's rebellion, Adam and Eve's temptation, and the consequences of disobedience. It's heavy stuff, but very good. An Essay on Man by Alexander Pope, which explores humanity's place in the universe and the pursuit of virtue through reason and understanding. The Lives of Poets by Samuel Johnson, profiles of English poets combining biography, literary criticism, both to assess their characters, works, and influence. This was found on many a Regency library table. The Vicar of Wakefield by Oliver Goldsmith. This is a story that follows the trials and tribulations and virtues of a rural clergyman and his family, highlighting morality, resilience, and human folly. It is quite amusing and very much in keeping with the library at Pemberley. Tristram Shandy by Lawrence Sterne. This chronicles the life of the fictional character Tristram, featuring many digressions, satire, and rather unconventional narrative structure, but it is still worthwhile reading for us today. Tom Jones by Henry Fielding. This tells of the adventure of a virtuous but very flawed foundling exploring love, morality, and society in 18th century England, also very popular in the Regency period. Clarissa by Samuel Richardson. This is a rather harrowing tale tracing the tragic downfall of a virtuous young woman, which exposes the dangers of manipulation, desire, and societal pressures. I can imagine Elizabeth Bennet being very enthralled with this particular one. Evelina by Fanny Burney follows a young woman navigating London society, manners, and pitfalls, while also exploring innocence, social ambition, and personal growth. Elizabeth would have loved this one too. Belinda by Maria Edgeworth explores love, marriage, and social manners, highlighting virtue, judgment, and the challenges faced by women in society. I spoke about this book relatively recently, having read it back in September as my Regency reading for that month. Jane Austen read Maria Edgeworth's works, and no doubt her characters would have too. Mr. Darcy's library, which Elizabeth Bennet might have described as large and well-chosen, would certainly have contained volumes of serious history and biography. The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon was a very popular work which traced Rome's fall, analyzing political, military, and cultural factors behind all of this with a critical scholarship and eloquence. The History of England by David Hume. During its time, this work was important for its chronicle of English history from the invasion of Julius Caesar to the Revolution of 1688, blending narrative analysis and philosophical insight. The History of Scotland by William Robertson. examines Scotland's political, social, and religious history with great narrative clarity and scholarly analysis. It is a very good work. Biographia Britannica. This is a multi-volume biographical compendium created in the latter part of the 18th century, detailing the lives and achievements of notable British figures across history. A book about the English rich and worthies, for the rich and worthies. This would have been a volume coming to the shelves of Pemberley possibly later. The Life of Dr. Johnson by James Boswell was published in 1791, right before the time of the happenings of Pride and Prejudice. This vividly chronicles Samuel Johnson's life, character, and thoughts, blending biography with personal observation and dialogue, and it is quite amusing at times. Both Darcys would likely admire philosophy and intelligent moral reflection presented in books. Essays Concerning Human Understanding by John Locke examines the nature and limits of human knowledge, emphasizing experience as the source of ideas. Essays Moral and Political by David Hume explores human nature, ethics, and society through reasoned reflection on morality, politics, and human behavior. This is a really intelligent and insightful book. Theory of Moral Sentiments by Adam Smith. This examines human morality, quite simply, morality, sympathy, and conscience, exploring how ethical behavior arises from social and emotional instincts. A Vindication of the Rights of Women by Mary Wollstonecraft. This great work champions the rights of women's education and equality, challenging societal norms that limit their rights and potential. Elizabeth Bennet would have gladly read this, I believe, but she might have done so discreetly. A fashionable and well-read couple, as well as a state library, would have included travel logs and works of natural philosophy. I believe that both the Darcys would greatly enjoy reading from this category. Captain James Cook's Voyages. This is the explorer's chronicle of his travels in the Pacific, detailing discoveries, navigation, and encounters with indigenous peoples. This was hugely popular in the 19th century and quite entertaining for us today. The Natural History of Selborne by Gilbert White. This is a record over a period of 20 years in which White describes in very minute detail the behavior of animals through the changing seasons in rural Hampshire, the rural Hampshire parish of Selborne. This is really a delightful read, even for us now. British Zoology by Thomas Pennant. This is a work that catalogued and described Britain's animal species, combining observation, classification, and natural history. This is a great book full of insights into the natural world of Britain. Botanical Works and Travels in the South Seas by Joseph Banks documents the 18th century naturalist, botanist, and patron of the natural sciences. His own scientific observations and studies of plants, animals, and cultures during extraordinary voyages. This is very interesting stuff that would have been very engaging reading material for those in the 19th century. This would have been on the shelves at Pemberley, and I highly recommend it for us to read today. The Natural History by Georges-Louis Leclerc-Buffon, in English translation, but the French edition would likely have been on the shelves at Pemberley too. This is a well-noted systematic exploration of diversity in the natural world examining animals, plants, and the principles of nature in general. What is not always talked about is that Jane Austen was a woman of faith, of Anglican Christian faith. Her novels all revolve around the themes of values, of morals, which were no doubt shaped by her own experiences of faith. These books would have been expected in every English gentleman's library and found on most household shelves of the 19th century in England. The Bible, sacred text of Christianity, conveying spiritual teachings, history, and moral guidance through poetry, law, and narrative. The Darcys were likely to have had the King James Version of the Bible on their shelves at Pemberley. Accompanying the Bible would also have been the Book of Common Prayer. This provides structured liturgy, prayers, and worship practices for the Anglican Church, shaping communal and personal devotion at home. Areopagitica by John Milton. This passionately argues for freedom of the press and against censorship as essential truth and learning. On Christian Doctrine by St. Augustine. This work is in 4 parts, which provides guidance on interpreting spiritual scripture and teaching Christian truth efficiently and wisely. The Analogy of Religion by Joseph Butler. This defends Christianity by comparing its truths to human experience and nature, highlighting reasoning and faith. Natural Theology by William Paley. This work argues the existence of God through evidence of design and purpose in nature. This was a very popular book to read at universities in the early 19th century. Mr. Darcy would surely have read this book when he was at university. Works of aesthetic and romantic tastes. This is a category that would definitely be Elizabeth Bennet's personal category of reading, I think. Poems and Letters by William Cowper reflect personal emotion, nature, and piety, blending lyrical poetry with intimate correspondence from the 18th century poet who was also an Anglican hymn writer. Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard by Thomas Gray, a famous work of poetry which meditates on morality, social equality, and the quiet dignity of living a rural life. It is very beautiful. Lyrical Ballads by William Wordsworth pioneers romantic age poetry that emphasizes nature, emotion, and ordinary life using common language, very relatable language. This was a very popular read during the time period. The Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe, a Gothic tale that blends suspense, romance, set within very eerie landscapes, exploring fear, virtue, and intrigue. And I could very much see Elizabeth Bennet, Mrs. Darcy, reading this one for a bit of Gothic escapism for cozy evenings. Other items found in the library at Pemberley could also include The Gentleman's Magazine. This was a pioneering 18th century and into the 19th century periodical that published essays, poetry, and commentary on literature, reviews of books, history, science, politics, and news of society. This would have been very popular reading material for a man of taste like Mr. Darcy. And for the ladies, something similar to The Gentleman's Magazine the Ladies' Magazine, which featured fashions, poetry, essays, music, history, news, and practical advice aimed at female readers of the 18th and 19th centuries as well. Elizabeth and her sisters would have been great readers of this particular publication. Other magazines and periodicals of the Regency time period were The Spectator, The Tatler, The Rambler. These were all periodicals that began in the 18th century and carried on well into the future, offering essays on manners and morals, literature, society, to inform and entertain the reading public. The Cook's Oracle by William Kitchener. This was a cookery book featuring the fundamentals of food and cooking that was popular in the early 19th century. And it is worth reading today just for the novelty. A treatise on the management of the country estate. This was a kind of guide on simply the running of a country estate, and this book would have been particularly beneficial to Elizabeth Bennet as she took on the role of mistress at Pemberley. A Complete Gardener by Philip Miller. This would have been one of the most important books at Pemberley, but for the gardener at Pemberley. But the Darcys would have been involved in all aspects of the running of the estate, not least the gardens and properties, which they both enjoyed. A little bit of bonus material, reading material, if we were to imagine Elizabeth and Darcy as parents, what publications would be beneficial to them. Mrs. Barbauld's Lessons for Children. This was a series of reading primers for the young by a British poet and essayist, Anna Letitia Barbauld, and was a significant work for the development of children's literature beginning at that time period. Practical Education by Maria Edgeworth, a treatise of educational philosophy as well as practical teaching methods written in the early 19th century. And it is a work that advocates experiential learning as well as the emotional well-being of the child, which was very much in opposition to the more rigid traditional methods of education of times past. This was a central focus on how to educate young children effectively, highlighting the importance of toys and tasks in fostering natural curiosity and a love of learning for young people. Aesop's Fables. This is a well-known collection of fables and stories originally handed down through oral tradition attributed to Aesop, a slave in ancient Greece, and over time developed into a tool for the education of children. This is just a sampler of what I think might have been on the shelves of the Great Library at Pemberley. I can imagine many, many, many more volumes in each of these categories. What is wonderful to consider is that so many of these works are still available to us today for reading and learning. I have a fondness for 19th century literature and history, so I had great fun playing librarian today along with you, and I am wondering what books you would like to see added to the Pemberley Library. If you enjoyed this episode, my own little ode to classic literature and to Jane Austen's characters and their Regency world, please let me know. If you don't have time to leave a comment, please leave me a book emoji to let me know that you were here and that you enjoyed playing librarian along with me. Thank you so much for joining me today. And as always, until next time, I wish you happy reading. And as always, I wish you much love and many blessings. I will see you again here very soon.